Have you ever wondered how a system that governs hundreds of millions of people actually works? On the ground? Today, we're going to dive in and try to demystify India's rural governance. And yeah, it seems really complex, but as you'll see, it's all built around one simple, powerful idea: putting power directly into the hands of the people. So to understand this massive system, let's start small. Let's start with a story. Meet Sunita. She returns to her village, her home, only to find something devastating. Her land, her legacy has been taken. Someone else is just living on it, claiming it's theirs. Can you just imagine that feeling of helplessness? It's a pretty terrifying question, right? When the most basic thing you own is just stolen, what's your first step? Who do you even turn to? Sunita's problem is really the starting point for our entire journey today. To find the answer for Sunita, we have to zoom out a bit. See, every personal story about justice, it happens inside a much larger system. So first things first, let's get a handle on the basic structure of power in India, what I like to call the governance pyramid. So think of it like this. At the very top, you've got the national government, making laws for the whole country. Then, below that, you have state governments handling things regionally. But the foundation, the base that everything else rests on, is local self-government. This is power at the grassroots.
Okay, so this local level is split in two. There's one system for cities and towns and a whole other one for villages. Now, for Sunita's village, and for something like 600,000 other villages across India, this system is called the Panchayati Raj. And this is where democracy gets really personal.
All right, so we found the system we need to look at, the Panchayati Raj. Now, let's get into the nitty-gritty. What does this power at the grassroots actually look like in practice? So, a lot like the national government, the Panchayati Raj has layers. At the most local level, you've got the Gram Panchayat for a single village. Then, a bunch of those are grouped into a block samiti, which coordinates work for maybe 100 villages or so. And then finally, the Zila Parishad oversees everything at the district level. The whole idea is to have this continuous chain of governance, right from the village all the way up. But here's what I think is the most incredible part of this entire system, the Gram Sabha. Now, this isn't some elected council. It is the village. Every single registered voter is a member. It's not representative democracy, it is direct democracy, about as pure as it gets. The Gram Sabha is where the real power is supposed to be. This is the meeting where villagers get together, they debate local issues, they approve projects, and, crucially, they elect the Gram Panchayat, the village council, and they keep them in check. So they're both the voters and the watchdogs. Okay, so we've got this really powerful democratic structure in place. But how does any of this help Sunita with her very specific, very personal problem? Let's trace her path and see how she actually navigates this system to get justice. Right, this is a really crucial point. There are basically two different arms of the system at the village level. You have the Gram Panchayat, the elected folks, and they focus on stuff like welfare. Roads, water, schools. But Sunita's problem is a land dispute. That falls under the rural administration, which handles law, order, and this is the key part, official record. This chart shows her path pretty clearly. She can't just go to the village council meeting. Her issue needs the formal administrative system. So her first stop is to file a complaint at the local police station. And her second and most important stop is with the official who keeps all the land records. And that official is called the Pachwari. Think of this person as the ultimate keeper of the land. They measure it, they record who owns what, what's being grown on it. They maintain the official village map and register. For any kind of land dispute, the Patwari's records are basically the final word. And here we go, here's the resolution. The Patwari checks the official records, and there it is, in black and white, the land is Sunita's. Her individual story shows you just how powerful accurate local records can be. But it also connects to something way bigger. A massive national reform, that 2005 law that gave daughters like Sunita equal rights to inherit property. A local official and a national law working together to deliver justice. Pretty amazing. So Sunita's story is the ideal, right? It's how things are supposed to work. But how often does that actually happen in the real world? Let's take a look now at the promise of this system versus its real-world performance, the good and the bad. When the system works, wow, it is transformative. Take this guy, Papatrao Pawar in Maharashtra. His village was hit hard by drought. As the Sarpanch, the village head, he led all these initiatives in rainwater harvesting and planting trees. And the result?
A village that was once barren became green and prosperous. That is the potential of real local leadership.
33%. This number right here represents one of the most radical and game-changing parts of the Panchayati Raj. It's the mandatory reservation of seats for women in local councils, a policy designed to completely shake up the power dynamics in rural India. And this rule creates leaders like Vandana Mayeda. I mean, not only did she become her village's first female sarpanch, but she actively went out and brought other women into the process. She convinced them to come to meetings and started tackling huge issues like education and sanitation that directly impacted them. But for every success story, there's a pretty persistent challenge. Research from places like PRS Legislative Research points to a really critical gap: the promise to hand over functions, funds, and staff from the state to the local level, while it's still incomplete. And these hurdles are huge. A lot of the time, panchayats just don't have enough money to do what they need to do. They have a hard time raising their own cash, which makes them totally dependent on the state government. Elections get delayed, which undermines the whole democratic process. And these really important planning committees that are supposed to connect rural and urban development often just exist on paper. So, after looking at the structure, a personal story, and the real-world performance, why does any of this matter so much? What's the big takeaway here? I think this famous quote from Mahatma Gandhi just says it all perfectly. With almost 2/3 of the population living in rural areas, the strength of India as a whole is fundamentally tied to the health of its villages. And this, really, is what we should all take away. True democracy isn't just something you do once every 5 years at a polling booth. It's an active, ongoing thing. It happens in village squares and community halls, in meetings like the Gram Sabha, where any citizen can stand up, speak their mind, and directly shape their own community's future. And that leaves us with a question that goes way beyond India's villages. This whole system is a reminder of the power of local democracy. And it kind of makes you ask yourself, in my own life, in my own community, how much of a say do I really have? And what could I do to maybe have a little bit more?